everyone. I will give you a presentation of the new Inventor 2010 Subscription Advantage Pack. This Advantage Pack is exclusive for our subscription customers, and the Service Pack or the Advantage Pack can be downloaded from the Subscription Center. A couple of general things that are new in the Advantage Pack is around the help tooltips. We now show progressive tooltips in all of our help items. We implemented a default view extent for our part sketches. We added 12 fabrication template files and some special application options that can be set through an XML file. One of the nice things in this release is the addition of AutoCAD blocks inside Inventor, so you can now directly import into Inventor any AutoCAD DWG block. You can pattern those blocks, and you can also pattern symbols. You can dynamically rotate, scale, and move those entities as well. We did a lot of work on the drawing side of the product. To name a couple here, replace model references. You can now finally replace a model from a drawing view. You can create multiple views on the base view creation. You can chain dimensions. This was the last type of dimensioning that we needed to add. There is a new selection filter to grab all the Inventor dimensions in one operation. You can now copy all table types to a different sheet and a different drawing. You can clip the hatch around the text, and we added architectural view scales as well. So this concludes my first part of the presentation in PowerPoint format. So I want to demonstrate this really live. I picked out 80 to 90% of these new things, and I want to show you this in a fluent demo. Let's have a look at the new elements in the Subscription Advantage Pack. First of all, let's have a look at the About dialog. You will see the word 2010 SR and the build number 540 as the indicator of the release. There is a specific Subscription Advantage Pack help file that I'm showing you here. It's not included in the standard help, so you'll have to go to this special menu and you get detailed description for every new element in the release. So let's look at some of the novelties in more detail. First of all, you see this very simple assembly. I used a floor component, and if you look at the color that I used the plywood color. So with this release there is a set of new template files with new colors defined in it, and the colors are geared towards the building industry. So you see masonry, you will see glass, concrete, etc., clean room floor. So in this case I assigned the concrete color to my part. I'll show you the templates. There is a complete new tab called Fabrication, which contains 12 new template files, and I'll pick the Fabrication DWG file here. In that file you see a couple of new sheet formats at the bottom here, those 6 formats here, and there are also AutoCAD blocks incorporated in this file. So let's start using this template to create a couple of views of our assembly. I create a second sheet and I go to one of those particular new formats, and I also change the sheet name to SH2 because I will be using this in a couple of seconds. I'll also rename sheet 1 to SH1 and give it the same format. So when I place a base view, I now have the extra option of creating multiple projected views in the same operation. So in the older releases we only could do this on projected view creation, but here we can do it right away from the base view. I will create a couple of extra views to show some other new things. So I create the section view first. Let's remove this projected view for a second, and I create a detail view on this section view. So I use one of the scales here. It's not the scale that I want, but I want to show you another point while I'm doing this. So I go to the application options, and there is a new option called display scale in architectural units. When I check this option, you'll see the difference in my view scale. In the style editor you can add new scales. So for instance, the half scale 1 divided by 2 is not in the list, so I can perfectly add it here to the list and then start using it in my drawing. But you'll see immediately the difference in display when I use this 1-2 scale. So it will show up in my list in architectural format with 6 inch equals 1 foot, and that is how it shows up. While I'm in this view, I want to show something related to hatching, so I increase the density of my hatch to show you a leader text and show you how leader text will now behave in hatching, and also regular text, by the way. So once I put text inside the hatch, you will see that we are clipping the hatch around the text, so we clearly free out the area for the text, much nicer than before. Let's step to our next point by opening a separate part file. So I want to include this sheet metal part in the same drawing. There are 3 holes in here, and it has a chamfer at the end. So I just include it on sheet number 1. The sheet is starting to get a little bit crowded, but I do that for a particular purpose, because I want to move some of my views later on to the second sheet. So I have a couple of views of my folded part, and I add, at this point I can add a bend table. Without showing the flat pattern, the bend table, it doesn't make much sense, so let's add the flat pattern view as well. So like I mentioned, the view gets very dense, so I want to give some more room. So I drag my flat pattern to the second sheet, and I can also drag my bend table now to the second sheet, something that was not possible before. So we can now copy and paste generic tables from one sheet to another, or from one drawing to another drawing. So on sheet 2 I will show you some improvements we made in the dimensioning. So we now have a chain dimension function that allows you to window select and place a bunch of dimensions. Once the chain dimension is placed, you can individually move the dimensions, though they are not a new type of dimension. I add a couple more dimensions here just to show you something else. So we have this design, and we now want to make a slightly different drawing with a slightly different shape. So I made a design modification where I go to a two-hole sheet metal part without the chamfer, and I want to quickly generate a new drawing with that new design. Well, now we have in the manage portion a replace model reference command that allows you to do this quickly. So I just select the part that I want to replace, and the dialog will show with the X the part that I have replaced. So I leave the assembly untouched, and you see what happens. So I get the part with the two holes. The dimensions that can survive are left untouched, and the SIG dimensions are indicated with the SIG color. If I set my in the document settings my orphaned annotations, I can even get more feedback, because I do want to see the circular dimension or the diameter dimension in the operation. So if I repeat the operation with this setting, you will see that my circular dimension is flagged as being orphaned. So good feedback, and we try to maintain as much dimensions as we can. So a very fast way to get to a new drawing of a slightly different design. And a new element as well is importing blocks from AutoCAD. So I have a centerline block in an AutoCAD drawing that I can now immediately import in my Inventor drawing. You can dynamically scale the block. You can rotate it by grabbing the blue dot. You can edit it via dialog. You can change the scale and rotation angle in the dialog as well, just like you could do with symbols before. I'll place the block in this near the center of my vertical edge. There is no snapping, unfortunately, so I'm eyeballing it here. So I'm placing a center line on the sheet metal part, and of course the position of the centerline symbol is not what I want, so I just use a different functionality, the pattern symbol or pattern block functionality, to move my symbol to another position here. So that's also a new function that we introduced with the subscription advantage pack, and I removed the original instance. So a nice addition of bringing in AutoCAD blocks into Inventor drawings, and you also get them in the browser, of course. We use this technique extensively in preparing the template drawings. So if you look at the AutoCAD block section in the template, you see a ton of BIM related blocks. I will be using the detail symbol block. This symbol allows you to indicate the position of a particular detail view on a particular sheet. So in this case I say I want to place detail A on sheet number 2. So it's a good way of keeping track where my detail views are when you are dealing with a ton of details and section views. So in this case it was called detail B. So I put my symbol where close to my detail location, and then I move my detail B actually to my sheet number 2. That's what this symbol is trying to explain to the user. So I just locate detail view and just drag and drop it on sheet number 2. So it's a architectural workflow that has been added through these blocks basically. So now my detail is on the second sheet. couple more things that we added in this release. There is a new selection mechanism that allows you to select all Inventor dimensions in one operation. So here I've selected all the dimensions. I can move them all in one operation, or I could possibly delete all of them as well. Very nice, fast way of handling all the dimensions in your drawing. In the second part of the presentation, I will zoom in a little bit on the stress analysis module and on data exchange. For the stress analysis module, we enhanced the report options. You can now export the stress analysis results to a single file. We improved on the label manipulations. When you do probing on the results, you can now position these labels in a much more flexible manner. We added in most of the dialog boxes an apply button to allow you to stay in the dialog and to repeat your command. Many of the functionalities that were available through the ribbon bar are now also available in the context menu in the browser, so you can add loads and boundary conditions from the browser. You can now show all material assignments. That means not only the original materials but also the overridden materials in one list, all from the browser. You can work with the shift and the control key when you assign materials. So we are adopting the regular Microsoft paradigm in giving you more comfort in assigning materials. You can exclude components in the mesh folder in the browser, so that means you can directly pick out the object that is preventing you from finishing the mesh and you eliminate it from the mesh operation. We added a lot of warning icons in the browser, so you have a much better visual control of what's going on. And we added also in the dialog boxes of the stress module very nice new icons to indicate warnings and fatal errors. On the data exchange side, we made two improvements. The first one is around JT files. You can now export JT files with configuration files, not only from within Inventor but also in Task Scheduler. And we offered extra options in generating translation reports. For any translator that we have, you can now suppress the report generation if you want. So let's go to a couple demos here for this functionality. For the second part of the presentation, let's look at the stress analysis environment. I have here a very simple assembly that has 3 or 4 parts, and I run the simulation and see immediately the new icons that are much nicer than before. So it tells me here that I have to assign material. I have the cement material assigned originally. I do the shift select to assign the steel material to the 3 remaining parts. Shift selection is a nice addition in the One of the new items in this release is that you can add forces and loads from the browser. So I here assign a force to an edge in a particular direction. So I use 1,000 Newton force and I want it to go in the negative Z direction. The addition in this release is that we now have the apply button, so I can hit apply and continue in the same dialog, so I don't have to restart the force dialog if I want to add a second force. So I can just stay in the same dialog and continue with my work. It's a little bit faster this way. then the same thing can be done not only for loads but also for the fixed constraint. So I can either go through the toolbar, or I can go to the browser and apply a fixed constraint on the second support. Also note the new apply button on the fixed constraint as well. So I finally have all the elements to run my simulation, and let's run it. Once again, much nicer warning icons to let me know that something might not be right. For the moment I decide to ignore these two messages. Here is my result. I go to displacements and I want to look at some values in particular areas. I use the probe command for that, and I just can click on any part on the screen and it will give me a label. Note the position of those labels. It's very close to the actual geometry. So in this release, let me remove the probes first. In this release, in the stress analysis settings, in the general tab, there is an initial label placement distance percentage. It's a percentage of the bounding box of your assembly. So if I increase that value, you see that the labels now are placed much further outside the actual geometry, and I can just move them if needed. And final thing that was changed in stress analysis is that we can now output the results into a single mhtml file. So all the images are embedded in that file, and it's more comfortable to send that file to someone else. Another area of improvement is on data exchange. I'm bringing in a step file here, and you see that the translation report has two new options. You can either save to disk or embed the report in the browser. So in this case I decide to not include any report whatsoever, because I suspect otherwise a crash, or when I'm in a debug situation where I want to avoid a possible crash due to the HTML report. This is one way that you can eliminate that crash factor if you suspect that the HTML report is contributing to the crash. So I place my imported step file here, and now I export that assembly to a JT format. And one new element in the JT export is that we can now use a configuration file. So if you go to the options, you can pick a configuration file. This is the one from the samples folder that I'm showing you here. It's just an ASCII file you can edit with Notepad, and I'm just showing here what's inside. There are 3 levels of detail that allow you to have more refined faceting and tessellation on the export.